Hello again, everyone. This is Sapiens, and I'm majicDave. So it has been 1 week since the last video, and I thought it was quite a productive week, and it was a nice place to sort of draw a line and say, you know, let's have a look at what I've done. So I worked on seasons. At the end of the last video, I talked about farming and how that was what I was probably going to work on next. And the first thing to do relating to farming was really to get things growing back after they were harvested. So I started thinking about that and pretty much immediately just realized that I needed seasons first. You know, I could have made the apples just grow back after some amount of time or something, but it really makes sense to time everything in with the seasons and have fruit growing back in the summer, and you know, have different fruits growing back at different times and all that kind of thing. So I've just modified fast forward to be 100 times faster than normal speed. So if I just hit that, we can see what's going to happen over the course of the next few days. So it's summer at the moment. I've made it so at the moment so there's a season per day that will be configurable, but you can see that the trees are all changing colour. The snow line is coming down as we're sort of heading through autumn and into winter. And now the leaves will start to disappear from the trees. I'll probably add some particle effects and stuff as well, but you know, the fruit will all just sort of stay there. But yeah, we've got snow on the ground. It sort of increases and you know, more and more snow around. We've got snow on some of these evergreen trees, and now we're heading back into spring again, and the snow's melting and sort of receding back up, and it'll eventually clear again from here. We've got blossom, you know, this is placeholder stuff, but yeah, we've got blossom on the trees as well. And any fruit that was picked will grow back. So that's a very quick overview of how the seasons look. I'll show you a bit more of that later, but I wanted to just show you a bit of how I actually went about creating the differences in the seasons. So the first thing that I'd wanted to do was get the sun position correct in the sky. So if I just speed this up again, you'll be able to see at the moment, yeah, there's 1 day per season. And so as you can see, the sun's quite low, so that this would be, right now, it would be summer in the southern hemisphere, heading into winter in the north. You can see the snow starting to show up here as well. The snow line's sort of coming down. I'll try to keep it north-south so we can keep an eye on things. And then the sun will slowly sort of head back up. We get the equinox round about here, so we're heading into spring in the northern hemisphere, so autumn in the south, and then we're sort of, the sun's coming up around here again now. So yeah, so it's actually modeling the tilt of the Earth. You know, it's not just shifting the sun around, rotating around. It's actually, you know, tilting the Earth back and forth. You know, is pretty similar to what happens in reality. Not absolutely perfect, you know, but it's pretty close. And the length of the seasons is configurable on the server, so you can always change how long you want the seasons to be. I think 1 season per day is probably a little bit too fast. You know, it probably needs to have at least a couple of days in each season. So with all this super fast forwarding, the Sapiens have aged very quickly, and actually, if I'd implemented dying of old age, they would have died by now, which, you know, but that's life. So as to how I sort of implemented it at this level, you know, the trees, let me just skip through to autumn. The trees going to autumn was pretty easy. I just sort of changed the colors, and I can remap the colors. I had to do a little bit of code to make that really straightforward for me to do, so I could sort of assign slightly random variants for each different kind of tree type and stuff. But a lot of the work was actually in creating sort of the winter models. So these ones with snow on them, you know, I had to add all the snow and stuff. You know, it wasn't too bad, but I sort of had to go through each of the pine trees and do that. I also had to figure out what should be on the ground and how I would have varying areas of sort of snow and the ground. You know, this is a multiplayer game, right? So you can't say, okay, if it's snow, I mean, you know, obviously I've got weather to do as well. I've got to actually make it snow, but you can't actually say, oh, if it's snowing, then slowly accumulate snow, because there's so many vertices here, and for the server to actually send all of that data across to the client and sort of keep everything in sync is just, you can't do it on a world with this sort of much render distance and sort of freedom of movement and stuff. So I had to come up with a more creative solution. And so basically this biome now has a tag of heavy snow winter. And so that will drive what shows here at different seasons. So it's all very moddable, and I've sort of built this into the mod framework as well. But so now you basically can assign tags that sort of say what something should be in a given season, and then that the current season is passed through when it's decided what vertex should get assigned what. Just doing that alone though wasn't great, because the entire map would sort of instantaneously change from one sort of type to another, and so you'd sort of just all of the snow would just suddenly appear. Yeah, so as you can see, sort of the snow level or the update level is slowly coming down. And it's also, filling in based on noise a little bit too, so it's a little bit sort of random. It's just sort of slowly filling in. So that's sort of a bit of a hack, I suppose. I didn't want to have all of these vertices updating all of the time. That's quite an intensive thing to constantly go through and check, what should happen for each individual vertex. So I basically, for every vertex, I chuck it into a certain sort of update bucket. It's given a position within the sequence of updating, and that position is based a little bit on noise and a little bit on altitude. And so then the server just goes through and slowly looks at each of these sort of buckets of vertices and updates them one at a time. But it's all kept in sync, so if you reload the world and then come back in, then it will all look the same. And it means that the server doesn't have to tell the client anything about these vertices changing. The client just runs the simulation. It's all just based on the current world time. And there's basically no network overhead to updating all of these trees and models and all that kind of stuff. So, it took a bit of work to figure all of that stuff out and test it and get it all working. But I think it's a good solution. There are sort of pluses and minuses, like this area is, this is not going to change. This whole area is just going to fill in pretty much at once. And it sort of comes through in a burst, it'll suddenly come through and change. But that's kind of realistic. That's what happens. The snow melts very rapidly when the temperature goes above zero, and then it'll fill in whenever there's a snowstorm. And actually trying to match up the weather with what happens here could be a challenge, but I'll try to do my best and sort of see if I can make it generally snow when the snow level appears and that kind of stuff. But we'll see. That's the thing with developing a game like this. Is you've just got to try to sort of give the illusion of things happening, because actually simulating real life to this scale is completely impossible. And another technical sort of challenge with all of this was updating all of these tree models, because there's, in my testing, generally maybe 30,000 trees at various points that all need to be updated with different autumn textures, different snow textures and stuff. And, you can't just loop over 20,000 objects every frame to find out what they should be at a given season or whatever. And obviously it has to sort of match server client as well. So when a tree is loaded on the client, it will add this callback function to say, at the next season change, make sure that you reload the model. And so it's not using any CPU. It's all nicely sort of stuck in buckets that are called back, in batches and stuff. And it's all working really nicely. It basically doesn't really have any performance overhead whatsoever. And then, I was able to use that for the apple trees as well, getting the apples to grow back. That took a bit of refactoring and stuff too. There was, various issues, but I'm actually really happy with how that's going with the fruit growing back. It's also working for other trees and plants as well, and also for like the branches. If you harvest branches from a tree, then they will grow back in the next summer. So a large amount of the work to support seasons was doing lots of modeling, and I thought it was a good time while I'm sort of in Blender to actually sort out some of the issues with the aspen models and some of the birch models and stuff too. So I went through and sort of tidied up all the little joints between the branches and sort of just made things look a little bit better, made the trunks a bit narrower, and just tidied all of that up. And of course, I also made winter variants of the models where I just sort of took away all the branches and then had a look at what was underneath. And sometimes I needed to add a few more kind of extra little knobbly bits and bits sticking out and stuff. And it's a work in progress. I'll probably add more detail as we go as well. But I'm actually relatively happy with how they've turned out. So I thought I'd record this little time lapse showing the process of how I sort of modify the model and then reload it into the game. It's all pretty quick. I just sort of save it out and then do a quick reload of the world. I don't have to recompile or anything like that, and it's working pretty well for me. I'm finding it relatively easy to make iterative changes. So I'll leave it there for today. Back to farming. I thought I might try a little bit of a different process for creating the next video. So I'm going to start recording that very shortly and sort of try to do a bit more of a kind of, this is what I plan to do, and then actually sort of this is how it's going, and then finally this is how it's ended up, rather than what I've been doing so far, which is really just talking about how things went. And I think maybe that might be more interesting and also kind of a bit easier for me to manage. So I'll give that a shot. So I'm going to move straight on to farming, and we'll see how that gets on in the next video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.